Coming up on the CHGO Cubs Podcast, could the Cubs be on the verge of a blockbuster deal? The hot stove is absolutely sizzling today. Plus, we're ranking the right fielders in the National League, and the Cubs are right near the top. And a special interview with the author of a book for Cubs fans and family. It's CHGO Cubs coming up next. Hey, Chicago, what do you say? It's the CHGO Cubs Podcast. It is Thursday, January 30th, and it is fairly warm, like 50 in Chicago. I don't know what's going on. It does feel better than opening day today.
3 straight days. I could have rode the e-bike here.
And didn't do it.
I didn't do it. Could have.
But if you think it's warm outside, wait do you see how hot this show is?
Oh, yeah.
But
and how hot it is in the office right now.
Oh, it is a little hot.
It's a little warm. Like, why is our heater on right now?
Shout out to everybody in the live YouTube chat. Best way to enjoy the CHGO experience is to get into that live YouTube channel. So go ahead and subscribe to the CHGO Sports YouTube page. That's up over 75,000 now. And, of course, you can follow us on Twitter and all the other places we're putting out content. Luke Stuckmeyer, Cody Delmendo, Sean running the ones and twos. We have a special guest in just a second. And I just want to let you know the other stuff coming up on the show. Wow, Jon Morosi dropped a bomb on us, right? Mm-hmm. We mentioned this possibility in yesterday's podcast, live around 2 o'clock, and now Morosi throws a little gasoline on the fire, and he may have changed my mind about something. We'll get to that, and then we're also ranking right fielders where it's possible the Cubs have 2 of the top 5 right fielders in the National League. It's a good spot for the team. Let's just say that. But we start the show with a Cubs fan who has done something special and a book that is out today for you to buy. And hey, Valentine's Day is here, so this is a possibility for the Cubs fan in your life. We welcome in Jeff Benjamin, a Cubs fan who lives in Philadelphia, works outside of the baseball and I guess writing industry until today, right, Jeff?
Pretty much, yeah. I wrote a book about the industry, my industry, several years ago. This is my first labor of love.
All right, so I have in the description I got of you, Jeff, it was Philadelphia-based restaurant phenom. I love that. We're going to talk a little food in a second, but you are at heart a Cubs fan who wrote this book, a memoir of fathers, sons, Fandom and Fate, Extra Innings is kind of the headline across the top. What made you want to write this book, and what is it basically about?
So essentially, at a high level, it's really about, your relationship with family and children and parents. I grew up, like many, grew up going to Wrigley Field whenever possible with my father, who was a Chicagoan. And from the very start, now the very first game at Wrigley Field I ever went to was an epic game. It was a 1977 16-15 game against the Reds, and it went into extra innings. And ever since then, my father and I would always pray for extra innings because it meant we got to spend more time together. As a father now of 2 daughters who watched me launch a business and spend not a whole lot of time at home, when we got a chance to spend time together, we would always pray for extra innings together. And ever since that, being a dad kind of softened you, and it really it made me want to memorialize my father and my time together, because other than spending time at Wrigley Field or at a baseball stadium at all, we didn't spend a ton of time together, and so it was perfect.
I think the Cubs are special in that way, and I don't know if this is part of the book or not, but when they won the World Series, you don't often see franchises, because of it was 108 years, you don't see fans flooding cemeteries and going to all these, taking transistor radios and televisions and phones to grave sites, putting flowers on grave sites because it meant that much. And that's the relationship you're talking about. It's not just the relationship with the Cubs or with Major League Baseball. It's the relationship you're building with the person experiencing those games and events. And many times in a Cubs fan, heartaches, unfortunately, right?
Yeah, my father lived his entire life never seeing the World Series. There is a Cubs hat buried with him, and you're right. I think the sale of W flags that were draped over tombstones post World Series was pretty great. And I don't know of another franchise that does that kind of thing for you.
Yeah, my grandparents passed before 16 as well, and that was like one of the first things my mom did whenever after they won. So it was a really special thing for our family. Definitely something that is very unique compared to other fan bases.
And I know that the headline is, fathers and sons, and for you it's father and daughter. I think it's interchangeable, right? Like for me, it wasn't necessarily just my dad that I connected with baseball. It was my mom. I'd come home from school, she'd be there, and she'd be watching the end of the Cubs game, and I would catch it on WGN back in the 70s and 80s. And then it would be going to Grandma and Grandpa's house on Sundays, and after church, they'd be watching the Cubs game because they'd be playing in the afternoon, a day game on Sunday. I haven't talked my kids into liking baseball yet. Now, they're only 1 and 3, Jeff. Do you have any advice? Do you have any advice for me on how I can get my children hooked on baseball?
Well, first off, you got to take them from the confines, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's key number one. Don't go in the middle of July for their first time. That's typically a mistake because it hits 105 and we all get cranky. But honestly, fill out a scorecard with them. It's what got me hooked. One of the things that got lost in my several moves around the country after moving to New York was that original scorecard from that 1977 game that my dad and I meticulously filled out. So you have to make it interactive. If it's just you two watching a game simultaneously, they'll never fall in love with it because it's a commitment to go to a baseball game. You have to sit for a long time.
Yeah.
How long did this take? How long did it take, and just the bones of it, like how many pages, all that type of stuff?
I think it's exactly 277 in pages. I wrote it in fits and starts. I started to think about writing it right after we came out there for Game 3 of the World Series, which was the first home game and also the very first night game I ever saw at Wrigley Field. So on the plane home, I kept thinking I should probably memorialize a lot of this. And for better, worse, or indifferent, I didn't have a whole lot to do during COVID either. So I wrote the bulk of it during that time, set it on a shelf. And then shortly after we got back from the London game in 23, which you'll remember we were supposed to go in 20 and it got canceled because of COVID. I decided it was really time to finish it up. So it was over the course of years, but I think all in all, it probably took me a little over a year to write.
What would you say is, outside of winning the World Series and the very first game you went to at Wrigley, like what's a memory that maybe is unique in a way to that maybe fans can all find a way to resonate with, but, is a little different?
Yeah, it's funny. I think every game I've gone to, and this is going to sound kind of cliche, had a part of it that was unique. I mean, the first time I pointed to the beer cup snake to my kids. I currently have in my wallet, and I've had since then, the ticket from the last game I ever went to with my father. That was a really special game in that I came home from that game saying to my sister, Dad was off. He was very introspective. He was very esoteric. We didn't spend a lot of time talking baseball. We talked life. And it was only a year and a half later that he left us.
But that stuff, that hits home in that it bothers me that they don't print tickets anymore.
Oh, same.
That bothers me. Like I want to have those tickets for. I'm not a hoarder, but I do like to keep mementos, and I like to have little things like that. And a little ticket doesn't take up any space in your home, but there it is. See, and you don't have that anymore. What are you gonna do? Show somebody your That's one of the ways baseball has disappointed me in the last few years. And it seems like a simple thing, but when you're talking about writing a book and that's something that's special to you, clearly it's not to people that go through the process.
You're right. It's funny. We talk a lot about that when we went out to the World Series. It was the first time I actually had an e-ticket, and I was convinced it wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
And so when I can still hear that ding of the usher checking us in, and my kids say that I look like very giddy at the time. I was like jumping up and down because I was just shocked that it actually got us into the stadium.
Yeah.
Do you, if it's not a favorite game, do you have a favorite player or your dad's favorite player or your daughter's favorite player? How has that progressed throughout the years?
So I'm currently wearing my Schwarbs jersey, and a little bit of deference to Philly.
Yeah.
We do a really good job of giving other teams greatest. My father, and you'll read it in the book at some point, he had this picture that's behind me of Ernie Banks hanging up in his room as he was on his later years. And at one point when he was coming out of consciousness, he said, hey, this room's really, really crowded. I'm like, it's just you and me, Dad. He goes, no. He's really crowded. I said, well, who else is here? He looked at me and goes, Ernie Banks is here. So I have a little bit, but he, I used to listen to this album that was a vinyl that they used to sell at Wrigley Field that had all the recordings of like Jack Brickhouse calling games and stuff. So, I remember all the old time players that I never got to see that my father got to see. So I have a soft spot for people like Ron Santo, Ernie Banks. And then, of course, my kids and I, we all have our own favorites. So I'm a Schwarbs guy. My wife is a Tony Rizzo guy. And so we all kind of liked Javi. Obviously, we lost that entire team. But, man, they brought us some joy, didn't they?
They did. And we have some hope. We have hope that it's climbing back in the right direction. I mentioned at the top that I was reading your bio, and it's talking about you're a phenom of the restaurant business. You have all these restaurants in Philadelphia you mentioned. But Federal, donuts, and chicken. I looked it up, multiple locations. All of a sudden, my heart started to sing. And then I noticed they even sell them at Phillies games. Is this correct?
That's correct. We do.
Okay. Tell me about the donuts.
The donuts are fantastic. They're a cake spice donut. The founders, one of the founders is a person who used to be a line cook in one of our Italian restaurants way back 20 years ago. So when he asked if I would help grow the business, it was an easy yes. It has a little bit of a Mediterranean feel, so there's a Baharat spice to it. It's a great spiced cake donut. What we sell at the stadium is called Hittin' Dingers. It's a red and white one. I'd be happy to make a blue and white one if Wrigley will ever have us. And it's fantastic. It's pretty moist. It's made hot and fresh in front of you.
Oh, so now you're talking to me. Now the ballpark. See, what I remember about Wrigley going for the first time as a kid, the smells that I got were grilled onions, still great, but it was also, back in my day, cigarettes. It was people smoking cigarettes in the stands.
My father smoked pipes in the stands.
That's right, yeah. Now you're telling me ballparks can smell like donuts, and that seems
like donuts
much
and fried
more
chicken, for sure.
Do you go to Citizens Bank every year when the Cubs come to town?
I do, and we actually had them for the last homestand here last year, so I went to all of the games. And I do wear my Cubs gear, and contrary to popular belief, Philly fans are very receptive of that.
that no one would believe that.
I've made it out unscathed every year.
That's good.
All right. Well, hey, this was fun. Great luck. With the book. It's released today.
Today, yep.
Okay.
Amazon.com, bookbaby.com, and kind of hopefully your local retailer at some point.
Hey, let's catch up. Come into Chicago sometime. We'll have you into studio, and we'll show you around the area, and then we'll all go to a Cubs game. We go to games on Fridays, Friday 120 Club. Maybe you want to join us sometime.
We do. As a matter of fact, I'll be out this July for sure.
Perfect.
Definitely send us a DM or reach out to Luke again, however you got a hold of him. I just showed up and was like, hey, let's do this.
His name, Jeff
I really
Benjamin.
Appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
Jeff
Awesome,
Benjamin,
Jeff.
Extra Innings, a memoir of fathers, sons, Fandom and Fate. Jeff, we appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay, so we're going to talk about this bombshell news from Jon Morosi in just a second. But first, a word from our sponsors. You want to be able to see all this stuff. Listen, when you go to a game, whether you're in Philly or at Chicago, you want to see the players. And sometimes you don't have great seats. That's just the way it works. So no matter what the outdoor activities you prefer, it's always important to have the best view. Right On offers a full range of optics products so you can see clearly. Everyone can use a good pair of binoculars. Let me check these babies out right here. Okay.
Oh, here we go.
Here they are.
You're going to need these in left field. Me and Braggs.
Look at these. First of all, very light, but also substantial enough that you can tell these are quality, right?
Yeah.
Like
they're light, but also
they're light.
quality.
They're not like overly heavy, but they have enough weight that I know they're not cheap. They're
durable.
Good. They're durable. That's
That's
right.
what we're looking
Bring the stadium to you. Maybe you're stuck in the cheap seats. Right On offers high performance at a lower price. Perfect balance of performance and value. Won't break the bank. Right On Optics. It's been around for over a decade. Every product receives a full quality control inspection. Right On promises unlimited lifetime warranty. Quality products you know you can trust. Check these out, Cody. Seriously, take the caps off those. You could see birds. You could see whatever you're looking for.
Okay.
Check out the full line of Right On products today at rightonoptics.com/CHGO. That's RITON optics.com/CHGO. Look at
Whoa,
Cody checking those out.
This really zooms out.
You've never seen Barb's comments so up close on the live YouTube
yeah,
chat.
seriously. Man,
Hold on, let me see those.
It's so zoomed in.
Now we got something. If Naked Guy goes out there, we really got a view of what's going on over there across the street.
Yeah. Don't zoom in on Carm, though.
Please.
Okay. What's your new phrase for 2025?
Try not to stink.
Try not to stink. Yeah. Mando is a big
Mando,
part
that's
of that.
right. Not try not to suck. Try not to stink.
One thing I'm definitely bringing with me into 2025 is Mando whole body deodorant, my friends. Stay safe to use anywhere on your body. Pits, balls, thigh folds, belly buttons, all of it. Created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal BO was being misdiagnosed and mistreated. Choose from a variety of fresh scents like bourbon leather, clover woods, Pro Sport, and they have a few others. All right, Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, and free shipping. As a special offer for listeners, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code that equates to over 40% off your starter pack. Use code CHGO at shopmando.com, SHOPMANDO.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. And try not to stink.
I forgot to tell Jeff, I've been to Philly. I don't think the cheesesteaks are any better than our beef places in Philly. So I'd be curious if he's got what his favorite place in Philly is. I noticed his donut place has Vietnamese coffee, which is supposed to be.
I've had Vietnamese coffee.
Supposed to be really good.
There's a Vietnamese coffee place right by where I live.
But I was checking those donuts out.
There.
Let me tell you. I was checking out those donuts. I thought to myself, I wonder how these stand up against Do Right.
The moment I learned that this guy owns a bunch of restaurants, I was like, Luke's going to have a heyday. He doesn't want to talk Cubs with this guy.
Well,
he just wants to
now
talk
that
food
I've got
with
his
him.
information, we're going to call him back he's going to be our food expert.
Food expert. Okay.
He's got all kinds of restaurants. Like he said, it started Italian. Now he's expanded.
Yeah.
There were, I think there were at least 5 locations of this donut place around Philly.
All right.
So it sounds like it's the Do Right of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And is there a better compliment, All right. So
Probably not.
we talked yesterday about King to the Cubs, right? And we said, well, the Padres, sooner or later, they've got to start paying some of these contracts, and they aren't the Dodgers. And sure enough, they're trying to trim some of this payroll, and they still are trying to trim some of that payroll. And King is a guy you liked yesterday, and we did the comparison. We said, okay, King or Cease, because both could be available. We've heard that Cease could be available.
We did that conversation 2 days ago.
2 days ago.
We did
it all
talk
blends together for me.
We did talk a little bit about King yesterday as well, but
right. But we said,
ago.
okay, Cease or King, which would you rather have? And you said, well, King would allow you more likely to get an extension done, maybe more than Cease
in season for sure.
Right.
Now, listen, they're the Cubs. They can they can bring anyone back, right? Like if I'm going to go into next season with, I guess we can call it hope, but expectation. I'm going to set the expectation. For me personally, I know literally 80% of the rest of the fan base will not do this. But me personally, I'm going in next season believing that the Cubs are going to find a way to get an extension done with Kyle Tucker at some point, whether it's in season or in December, whatever. That's my expectation. But when you talk about Dylan Cease and Michael King, while they're both one-year rentals, I think they're both opposites in terms of potential contract extensions and just the hassle of doing business because of the agent that they have.
Right. Well, and I said, when we talked about it, I was like, well, the problem with the one-year rentals is everything could be gone after 2025. That player could be gone. The prospects you gave up could be gone.
Sure. And
so you better be really, really, really good. And what the Dodgers are doing seems insane. So my hesitation became, how many of these rentals can you afford to do? And I said, at the very least, you would have to assure me that somehow you're getting a deal done with whoever whatever this frontline pitcher would be. You either have to make sure that that guy is staying, or you have to make sure that Tucker is staying. I prefer you make sure that both are staying, right? So
sure,
Cease would cost a lot of money, and he's going to cost you probably more pieces than I think King would cost.
This season, Cease will be, well, Sean, you would know for sure because you're a Sox guy. He's 29 right now, going to be 30 at some point during the season.
That sounds right.
Right? So it's the same thing as Michael King, but as we said the other day, Cease more proven, has had more success, was second or third runner-up in Cy Young 3 years ago, two or 3 years ago, right, in the American League. He obviously has incredible stuff. We've sat here
different than any pitcher the Cubs have.
Yes. I mean, we've sat here and brought up the Quintana trade too many damn times in our 3 years of existence, Luke. We talk about this guy too much. So we don't need to bring up the numbers. We know.
Right.
We know what this guy is. And I think the year after his Cy Young season, some of the numbers they don't tell the entire story. I think Sean could attest to that. But in terms of whiffs, K rate, all those things, that's been consistent. I think early part of his career with the White Sox, he struggled with command. He has seemingly figured that out. And he continued that in San Diego last year. So in terms of, is he good at baseball? Yes, he's great at baseball.
He's very good at baseball.
You can absolutely pencil that guy in number 1, number 2 in your rotation. On the Cubs, you'd be obviously be number 1, right? But yeah, just like for Michael King, Cease gets more whiffs, more strikeouts. This rotation, in my opinion, needs a guy like that. But he will cost you more. And yes, you will likely be going to free agency for this guy because he's a Scott Boras guy, and all of the clients for Scott Boras, more often than not, go to free agency.
Well, Jon Morosi's comment today on MLB Network was, of the two, King and Cease is the most likely to be traded in his opinion. And he said, and when you're talking about teams, one team to keep an eye on would be the Chicago Cubs. Now, it's the team he started with, right? Obviously, because we're talking about that. But also, he points out right now, because Profar left, the Padres they're missing an outfielder.
Missing a left fielder. They got Merrill and
the
Tatis
name he mentioned, he said, boy, it'd be awfully hard for the Cubs to take this and say, we're going to trade Owen Casey for 1 year of Dylan Cease. That's a difficult thing to swallow, but Cease would be unbelievable in that rotation, and Casey, if you're keeping Kyle Tucker, plan on it, making a great run at him, Cease instantly slides into left field because he's ready to go. So the Padres could just stick him in left field, and he could be one of their outfielders for this season. That's the type of guy they'd be looking for. And, of course, they'd probably be looking for Assad or Brown or, whatever the mixture of young pitchers might be to go with that. Now, remember, when the Cubs traded Cease, it was Cease and Eloy for Quintana, but Quintana had affordable control with him, and it was a different time in baseball. Yeah. But it was two top prospects. It was a top hitting prospect, it was a top pitching prospect from the Cubs, and they went, and the key was the Cubs were looking for that control. This is a one-year rental. Now, don't get me wrong. Back in the day, all my Sox friends were trying to sell me on Quintana's an ace, Quintana's an ace, Quintana's an ace. He was never an ace. Cease could be an ace. If you have, if you have Cease, Steele, Shota, Tyone, and Boyd as your rotation, and then you can expand out to guys like Ben Brown if he's not part of a deal, or whoever the next, you've got yourself one of the best rotations in the National League.
Yeah.
And you're not just a serious contender to win the division. You're a serious contender.
Do you want my opinion on how much I believe this rumor?
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe this rumor.
Do you believe it more than Bregman?
Yes.
I do,
I'll
too.
say that.
I believe it more than Bregman.
I definitely believe it more than Bregman, but again, yesterday, I said 5% chance for a Bregman, and you said 2%.
I said 2%.
I guess I'd put Cease at like a 60-40 situation, somewhere in there. Like, I'm in the middle. Like,
that's a lot higher, Cody.
For sure, but like the difference is that the Cubs they absolutely need, in my opinion, another starting pitcher. Third base, you can make the argument that, they need a third baseman because we just don't know what Matt Shaw is, but Matt Shaw is a top prospect in the organization. We all know the Cubs want to use that guy, and we also know that Bregman has draft pick compensation attached to him, along with international free agent pool money that the Cubs are always they always take value in that. So this is different. This
gives you the goosebumps a little bit more than Bregman coming to third base.
Yeah.
Safe to say?
Yeah,
this rumor gives you goosebumps a little bit more than Alex Bregman.
I would put it at maybe 40%.
Oh, up to 40.
40%. Somewhere, I would say 40% chance that this happens, and that's only because the Cubs have been linked to the Padres all winter, like quietly. Mm-hmm. This is like these last 5 days has been the most the Cubs and Padres trade talk, smoke has been out there. The most, but I believe even back when Seiya's agent started talking about him not wanting to play or him wanting to play the field, there was a little bit of smoke about Cease and the Cubs kind of being linked to that too. So was that back in December? So, but it feels like a million years ago. It was just a month ago.
At the very least, Jed Hoyer and the Cubs have checked in on Dylan Cease, which they probably should.
Yeah. Well, again, like I think they checked in on Dylan Cease back in December quietly. It was a very quietly done thing, I think. But I just don't see it happening. Maybe it's a bad reason, but they just do not. Jed Hoyer and Scott Boras just do not get along, and I don't see Jed Hoyer wanting to move Owen Casey for 1 year of Cease. I
don't hate it because especially if you're going to be trying to pitch Kyle Tucker, I feel like you can give up Casey because your outfield seems somewhat set, especially if you are keeping Alcantara.
Yeah.
The biggest prize that you don't want to get rid of is Shaw. I mean, we saw the Red Sox go out and get Crochet, and they ended up keeping 3 of their top prospects in Robinson, Mayer, and then Anthony. And then they only had to give up their 4th and 5th. So especially with 1 year rather than Crochet having 2 years, if it's just Casey,
well,
I don't think it's
going to be more than
especially because he's falling on prospect rank.
It's definitely more than Casey, but Casey has become a bigger trading chip because of the Tucker signing. The left-handed power, the potential that maybe somehow in a dream you could keep him. Worst case scenario, for one season, Seiya would go back to right field if everything fell apart. But I agree, if you're trying to sell Tucker and your boss, Tom Ricketts, on I can do this, I am the guy, I deserve a big extension, and I want to win, and we're going to win the division this year, then you look at that rotation and you look at Tucker and right, and honestly, I'm willing to roll the dice on Shaw at third, and all of the sudden You have a great defensive team. You finally have star power in the middle of the lineup, especially from the left side. And you have a grade A rotation. I'm with Sean. I'd think about it real hard.
Well, I'm not saying I'm not thinking about it, Luke. I'm saying that I just don't see it realistically. I think the Cubs are more interested in Michael King. That's what I think. I think this is just more smoke and mirrors.
That's not Morosi's business. All right, first, a word from our sponsors. For the best way to start 2025, head to Ray Chrysler Dodge Jeep and Ram and shop Start Something New sales event to score some of the New Year's best savings on new vehicles. Hurry in today to browse their huge inventory of new vehicles right now and get 0% financing on all new 2024 Jeep models, or shop over 125 vehicles priced under $20,000. Let the amazing team at Ray CDJR help you during each step of your car shopping journey. With Ray's Price Promise, the numbers you're hearing right now on our podcast are the same ones you'll see in store or here online. That's because Ray's Price Promise means no price changing, no add-ons, and no hidden fees. They prioritize affordability for their customers. So hurry into Ray CDJR today to shop one of the Chicago area's biggest inventories, then drive home with more money in your pocket than you'd expect. So if you're in the market for a new vehicle, you got to check out that team, Ray Chrysler Dodge Jeep and Ram. The only team we recommend. Visit them today on Route 12 in Fox Lake. For more information, visit Ray CDJR in Fox Lake or raycdjr.com. Serving the community since 1963. 0% available on all new 2024 Jeep models and 125 vehicles priced under $20,000.
It's not a bad deal. Not a bad deal. It's a great deal.
It sure is.
All right.
Time of year to do it.
Pick up your car and then head to Game Time on your way to the game and get some cheap tickets. Maybe get on the road, go to Omaha tonight and watch Illinois and Nebraska like I wish I could. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets to find the best value. Is Nebraska in Omaha? The University of Nebraska?
Lincoln.
Yeah, Lincoln.
Come
Omaha.
on, guys.
It's Nebraska. I'm sorry.
Well, I thought he just said, is Omaha in Nebraska?
Oh, yeah.
Which that's a yes.
Creighton is in Omaha.
Creighton.
Creighton, Omaha, University of Nebraska, Lincoln.
Okay. Greg McDermott, Doug McDermott, Bulls
That's right.
legend's dad, coaches there.
Kyle Korver.
Anyway,
Creighton.
You could go to Lincoln, you could go to Omaha,
Nebraska.
if you want to make that trip, or what? I know the Bulls have to be coming back home soon. They played in Boston last night. Got Hawks, still got some games left. You know, spring training.
Omaha's an easy flight, I'll tell you that. Real cheap, real easy. Southwest
spring
Airlines.
training right around the corner too.
Yeah.
10 days? 10 days to spring training? Or pitchers and catchers reporting?
Yeah.
So games will eventually start. So, yeah, man. Game Time just makes it easier. Like I always say, I get on the red line, get off at Addison, pull up Game Time, and my life just significantly gets easier when it comes to buying tickets, all right? They have the all-in pricing. This is something that Luke loves. He loves this because the all-in pricing feature shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. There's no bait and switch. They don't tell you that it's, $25 and then you get to checkout and it's $75 because of all the fees. They tell you straight up front that it's this much, and no one likes a bait and switch. So I always like to point that out. They have a panoramic view from their seat in the app before you buy. So if you're at Wrigley, there could be a poll. You might want to avoid that, right? That helps. They have the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHGO for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with code CHGO for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Very nice.
So can we?
Yes.
You
want to put a bow on Cease?
Yeah, it's like, again, I obviously would love Dylan Cease on the Cubs.
Man.
Obviously would. It's just
I'd feel so good about this
I'm
season.
curious how much the Cubs want him, because isn't there, I swear I listened to an interview sometime this offseason where maybe it was Jed when he was on with Cap, and they talked about remember where they were talking about trades or free agent signings that
right. Yep.
Maybe it's that. I don't know. But there was some interview I listened to where, Theo said that, if we just want a guy, we'll just go and pay him. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like Jed has that same mentality just because it's part of the same front office. So, like, if they really want Cease, they could give up Casey or whoever, or they could wait a year and sign him if they really wanted him.
Yeah, but he might not be around in a year. He might not have a job in a year.
Who, Jed? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, but like
he's got to assure he's got to be there.
I just don't think he's operating on
I don't either.
on that though. And I do think even without him that they have a solid team. Do I think they need another starter? Yes. But I feel nervous about trading for Cease when I'm just not sure that they will be able to bring him back in free agency.
I think
because Boris is going, especially if he has a huge year.
I guess, yeah.
If he has a huge year and then he's going to be asking for, I don't know, on however much money, on top of the fact that it also in my head is like I think Kyle Tucker should be prioritized over Cease in terms of the money. Now, the Cubs could easily re-sign both. I'm not saying that they shouldn't.
Nothing more important than trying to
re-sign Tucker. But they absolutely could, right? It's just a very slippery. Thank you. I can't talk, man.
Slippery slope.
Slippery slope.
Say it 10 times real fast.
I get
slippery slope. Slippery slope.
Thank you. It's a very slippery slope there. And I mean, didn't you say this yesterday? How many 1-year guys are you going to bring in?
Well, there's no question about it.
And I understand why a lot of fans right now feel like they're just going all in for 1 year. But I don't necessarily view it that way because they still have 7 top 100 prospects. Is moving Casey going to ruin the farm system? No, they'll still have 6 guys, but Casey he's different from a lot of them outside of Ballesteros, like left-handed bat, and has the most power in their entire farm system. And so like there's a lot of value in a guy like that. Now, would I have moved him for Kyle Tucker? Yeah, I would have. And they moved Cam Smith instead. But we're talking about a pitcher here this time. And outside of all of the the numbers and the success and all this, we know how risky pitchers are with injuries.
I know.
And again, 1 year left. I just, if you can guarantee me that they would get a contract extension done in December, if you can bring out the crystal ball and tell me, then yeah, I would include Casey or whoever in a deal for Dylan Cease. I would.
I don't think you can guarantee that they're going to get a deal done with Cease, but I could almost guarantee that they're going to be a force in the division.
I'll say,
right, like,
yeah,
and that's one season, but that's something that will be much more likely to convince Kyle Tucker that Chicago is a place he wants to be long term, than being mid and winning 83 games.
Fair. I guess one way I can also look at it too, to spin it for my own, for me is if you trade Owen Casey in a way that kind of signals that they're going to do whatever it takes to bring Kyle Tucker back.
Yeah, exactly. And, so, we have to remember, too, I'm not saying Owen Casey isn't going to be a great major leaguer. He might be the best prospect out of all those guys. We don't know.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, Keith Law didn't even have him in his top 100 prospects. In what Sean reminded me the other day is not supposed to be a good farm system or a good minor league system right now. Minor leagues are not full of superstar players right now. And it's not a great top 100 list, and Keith Law doesn't even have him in the top 100. So there is a possibility that you're talking about a guy who's just a major leaguer someday.
Yeah.
And then giving him up isn't as heartbreaking as it is if he goes out and is a guy that hits 40 bombs every year and could be a right fielder. It's a different story, but they have to use some of these guys at some point. I'm not – listen, the Dylan Cease thing didn't float the boat for me that much earlier in the week, but when Morosi said it, all of a sudden the hair on my arm stood up and I was like, wait a minute. We could have a team to talk about this year. Well, we could actually have real legitimate excitement at Wrigley Field. Now, It might stunt the growth overall, but that's still going to be dependent on how the correct, whichever prospects they pick to stay, their success moving forward is still going to be dependent on how those guys progress and how they develop. So you still are going to get to see that in Matt Shaw.
Sure.
You're still going to get to see that in some of the arms that they do keep.
Here's a question to also kind of, maybe spin some people's heads that are against it. Would you rather have Dylan Cease, or would you have rather gone and paid Corbin Burns or Max Fried?
It doesn't matter because they're not willing to go that high, which is why it tells you most likely they won't go that way for Cease.
That's not.
But you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Which pitcher would you rather have?
Just everything based off talent and everything.
Generally,
success.
I'd rather spend the money and not spend the prospects.
Okay.
And the money.
So you're saying you would have rather them?
I was all about, hey man, go get Corbin Burns. I was all for that. Do I like the idea of Cease being traded for and giving up some pretty good ranked prospects better than I like the idea of Flaherty? And I would say my heart today tells me, yeah, I'd rather go all in and get Cease and risk some serious prospects.
I asked my question because let's just zoom out and go back to the beginning of the offseason. If we were to take all the information we know now and take it back to November when we're sitting here grading and everyone on the internet yelling at us and all that stuff.
And us crying Soto.
And me doing a rant about the Cubs not calling Juan Soto at all. If we were to take today us and give all that information to old us 3 months ago, and you asked me who I would rather have with all the information that we know now, I personally probably would rather have just trade for Cease. Personally.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, it's the too many rentals thing that is the only part of it that scares me. It's not giving up prospects. That doesn't scare me. What scares me is, are you going to do too many rentals and we're going to be left with nothing in the cupboard, so to speak, at the end of 2025? And my thought is, I'm so hungry as a Cubs fan. Cubs fans are so hungry for this team to be
good,
interesting, not vanilla, a real team. Yeah. You're still not going to be the Dodgers, but baseball's baseball. Give us the best team in the division on paper without question and play the games. That's what we really want to see. We want to see playoff baseball. And Dylan Cease is more likely to give you playoff baseball in Chicago than prospects who may not make the roster this season and may not develop into stars someday anyway. Dylan Cease is a star. Tucker is a star. I don't want to do too many of those one-year rentals, but again, I'm putting on this by saying one of them would have to be signed long-term. Yeah. It doesn't even have to be this season. I'm just saying next year in the offseason, you would have to bring one of those guys back.
Yeah.
For me to say, okay, I'm cool with it.
Yeah. I know we have to do this list, but
we do, and we're going to get to a second. By the way, did you see that Luis Robert, the Reds and White Sox, Luis Robert almost ended up in the Cubs division.
Or the Giants, yeah.
Or the Giants. I wouldn't have liked him on the Reds.
No.
Because I'm still convinced the Reds are the biggest threat in the division.
Yeah. And I'm, as much as me and you sat in Studio B yesterday and said that we'd rather have, or that we think PCA will have a better season than Luis Robert next year, that's my explanation was all based on health. Like if he's not healthy, then yeah, I think PCA would. But if Robert's healthy, he'll be great. And also if he wouldn't play at a great American ballpark, it's such a hitter-friendly park, he'd probably mash there. So I guess we can monitor that going into July.
Yeah. Well, my thing with that was the question was asked, which player in Chicago? And I said, well, one of them won't be in Chicago for half the season.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
Robert's probably gone. And if he's not gone, then he is having a bad season.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's the way to work. Okay. We started in left. Then we went to center yesterday. Today we're in right field.
Speaking of left, did you see MLB's left field ranking last night?
Yes, they had some guys that we didn't consider left fielders, including Churio, because we figure he won't be there this year. So that's why
they did have Yelich on there, though.
Right.
Yeah.
They put both on there.
Yeah. Well, and obviously it's all of baseball, so
right. Yeah, it's not just National League.
But they had
we're a more exclusive club.
They had Ian Happ number 3 on there on theirs though, and
that's
so
why Happ where we had him is not unrealistic.
And Happ was the first National League player, so we should have put Happ number 1 on our list.
Listen, we put, I believe, Hernandez ahead of him because of the power.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And we put Yelich, saying if Yelich is healthy, if you're asking me apples to apples, yes. Yeah, it's probably Yelich. But there is an argument for the Cubs have there is an argument you could make saying the Cubs have the best left fielder and the best right fielder in the National League. And I think right field is tricky too, because of course we know Juan Soto is with the Mets. He's back in the National League. But right when they got Tucker, the Cubs, we said right away, take a look at the numbers. Take a look at the numbers. Kyle Tucker's right there with Juan Soto is an absolute assassin with the bat. He stalks pitchers. Mm-hmm. That's why he stalks pitchers with every pitch they throw. He's sitting there waiting like a polar bear, waiting to chomp on a seal. That's the way he looks at the baseball coming at him. Tucker is right there with him offensively, but defensively, he's a better player.
Yeah, so Juan Soto -4 outs above average, and I think it was just 0 defensive run saved last season with the Yankees, in their Mickey Mouse ballpark that they play in. So interesting to see how his defensive numbers will rank at Citi Field this year, but offense alone, like you just had to put him. You had to put him number 1 on this list.
He's an 8-WAR player that isn't very good defensively.
Right.
That means he's an absolute beast at the plate.
Yeah.
I can't go Tucker better, but Tucker is a more well-rounded player than Juan Soto. But Soto's so extremely good at offense that it's.
He had just to put it out there, like for anyone that like maybe doesn't understand, like he had a 460. You had a 462 expected weighted on base average. Like no one's like Mookie Betts was a 356 expected weighted on base average. 180 WRC plus. I mean, he's just an unreal talent offensively.
That number is crazy. The 180 weighted runs created plus. The fact that he only played 78 games. He hit more home runs than Cody Bellinger did, who played like 150 something games. I mean, if you double his games played, or if you at least get him to like 150, he's probably an 8-WAR player. Like, I don't think it's crazy to have a discussion Tucker versus Soto. I think the issue is just Soto's so much younger. That's why he's going to get paid into the $700 million. Yeah. But and Tucker should be broke off nicely to like $400 million.
And Tucker, as we've said while doing these lists, Kyle Tucker, he's been consistent. Like he's been a 4 to 5 WAR player each of the last 4 seasons, I believe. Right? He's been a consistently really, really, really good player, and that's probably putting it lightly. We can say great with him. But yeah, like we also got to factor in what have you done for me lately, and he only played half the season last year because of an injury. Soto played 157 games, but yeah, like Sean said, if Tucker plays 157 games like Juan Soto did, yeah, he probably has similar numbers if he was at the pace that he was at last year with the Astros. So, yeah, I mean, there's a reason Tucker is number 2 on our list because he's consistently been awesome too.
Left and center didn't necessarily have the star power that I think right field has. Mm-hmm. We went Soto, Tucker, Acuna, Carroll, and we gave Cubs, just like MLB put the 2 Brewers in there. Mm-hmm. I'm putting Seiya in there, even though I know he's not good defensively. He is one of the best hitting right fielders, and he will play some right field. So we made the exception here just to show you that, like, they do have 2 of the top 5 right fielders, but when you have Chourio, Tatis going 6-7, that's 7 players. That's 7 players that make your mouth water as a baseball fan.
Well, one of them makes my mouth water very much because he's a former White Sox. Can we go through the thought process of putting Fernando Tatis below Seiya Suzuki? Because I think if we're doing any fantasy draft,
he had a lower WAR.
I think he had a down year last year.
Yeah, but I mean, he's
3.2 WAR, 3.6 WAR.
He seems to, but is this B WAR or F WAR?
F WAR.
Fangraphs.
All right. I mean, I don't know. It seems like Tatis is kind of figuring it out in right field. And then especially just with his youth, I mean, I'd take Tatis above.
Listen, Chourio could be ahead of both of them too.
I would probably put Suzuki 7th. I think Suzuki's a little high. Especially with talk about him moving to the DH. I mean, like, is he even going to be a right fielder come June?
Where do his numbers stack up offensively against some of those guys? He's right there. Corbin Carroll is a great player. Like, Ronald Acuna to be 3rd is insane. Like, when he's healthy, there aren't too many players. Like, if I'm building a fantasy baseball team with just the best names of players like that I can come up with and not even thinking about position, Ronald Acuna is on that list, isn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, he would have – I know he played 50 games last year before the knee injury, and he's honestly kind of underperforming those first 50 games. Who knows what would have happened throughout the entire season if he stayed healthy. But, I mean, over the course of his career, he's been one of the better outfielders in baseball, obviously, on such a cheap deal.
Also, just real quick, just for people watching, 102 games from Tatis where he put up 3.2 F WAR, 132 games from Suzuki where he put up 3.6 WAR. I would say it's safe to say if Tatis plays 30 more games, he probably gets that 0.4 F WAR.
Okay.
You realize this is the CHGO Cubs podcast.
No, I know.
Right?
I just
Sure.
To be honest with you, I just thought
creating discussion.
Don't let the facts get in the way of a good story.
I also
Sean.
just thought that Tatis had a down year in general, so it is what it is.
Craig Brindle says Sox fan getting too much mic time.
Dude, if you ask me who I would take, like, over time, I guess I would take Tatis because he's younger. I believe he's younger, right? He's still in his early 20s.
I mean, man.
I'm just, again, we've said this all week. Like, it's hard to balance. Like, what have you done for me lately, and what is the body of work? So that's the only reason I say that.
26 years old, 28 days. He just turned 26.
Yeah. No, I'm not denying that he's not a great player or anything like that. Yeah.
I want you to pick 4. Pick 4 out of this group where you say, I got to have that player. Okay? So you can only have 4. That's where it starts to get tricky. Like, the bottom of the list is you could put other guys in there. Lars Nootbaar, I mean, okay. Yastrzemski, okay. Nick Castellanos, not a good fielder, had an off year last year. We loved him in Chicago, but when you go from Tatis, Chourio, Seiya, got to have the guy. Seiya slides on that list for me, as Sean is talking about, but you know that everybody's going to say, I have to have Soto. You know that everybody's going to say, I have to have Tucker. Who are the next 2 that you have to have if you're saying my list of greatest players has to have those 2 guys? Who do I really want on my team if I'm making this purely hypothetical team?
Probably Chourio, because if he's so young.
Chourio over who? Because then you're taking out either Acuna or Corbin Carroll. And I really like Corbin Carroll.
That's a tough question.
That's why I chopped it at 4. Because if you take Chourio, then you got to take out either Acuna or Carroll, and you're also eliminating Tatis.
Yeah.
I can eliminate Tatis because he seems like a bonehead.
Well, if we go by,
he's made some off the field decisions that have been questionable.
If we go by what have you done for me lately?
Mm-hmm. Chourio's so young. He's like still 20, isn't he?
Acuna now, I believe, is Acuna's injury another ACL, Sean?
Yes, I believe that's his second ACL.
So that's ACL. 2 torn ACLs. He's 26. He's 26 years old. So let's just, I think I would take Chourio over Acuna. Wow. Over the next 5 years, based off these 2 injuries, how Chourio developed from last year going into the second half of the year. And, I mean, we saw what he kind of did in the postseason for the Brewers, too. He wasn't the reason they lost that series to the Mets. So, I just think Churio is going to be a Cubs killer for a long time. Maybe I would keep Acuna and take Churio over Carroll.
So you might go Soto, Tucker, Churio.
Say that again.
Who would be your number 3? You would go Soto, Tucker,
Churio,
and who?
Those are the 3.
Well, we're doing 4.
Oh, we're doing 4?
Yeah,
my bad.
4.
My bad.
You get a 4th guy.
Wait, there's more. And just to throw out there, he tore his right ACL in 21 and then his left ACL this year. So he's torn now both ACLs.
It scares you.
Okay.
That's like you're talking D Rose type stuff.
Oh man. I mean, Sean has a point about Seiya and the fact that he's probably not going to play a lot of outfield. Like he'll play some outfield. I think
Seiya's not my top 4.
I think Seiya is a great hitter. He's a great hitter. He's also going to be he's entering his 30s.
Yeah.
So I guess I would probably go Soto, Tucker, Churio, and Corbin Carroll.
And this is the 4 to like build a team?
No, man, I'm telling you, I got to have 4 players. It's not a fantasy team. It's like these 4 guys are unbelievable. And we're making a list. We're doing a snake draft, and I'm saying I'm taking these guys. You're not playing. It doesn't have to be a specific place you're playing them or in the order. Just my 4 guys are better than your 4 guys.
I think Soto and Tucker are going to age gracefully. So I would put Soto, Tucker, 1, 2 out of those 4. You can have an argument all day about
I think those 2 are guaranteed.
Then I'd probably go Acuna, Churio, Tatis. So Tatis is right outside of it just because Churio's so young.
And so
it's a very hard exercise. And so I had to go by. I started thinking, what have you done for me
Carroll
lately?
Out.
What have you done for me lately?
Yes.
And how do I think they'll be over the next 5 years?
Well, if you're, it would help if you had a set of doctors that have looked at Acuna's knee that could tell you this guy's going to be just fine or he's not going to be just fine anymore. And if that were the case, then I would say, okay, fine, Carroll, Churio, whatever order you want to make it, and I would leave Tatis off.
Yeah, it's a very tough exercise, and that's just how deep right field is. And just in the National League, I mean, this doesn't include all the American League ones. It's a loaded position. Is Tucker clearly the best outfielder in the division, right? With Churio,
defensive outfield. Oh, in the
just
division.
Overall in the division, like you would.
Yeah, he's unquestionably better than Churio, but Churio again is 20 or 21. Yeah. I don't know if he's turned. I think he turns 21. Maybe in March or this season.
Say is a better hitter than Churio too, more proven over time.
March 11th. So during spring training, Churio will be 21.
Right after my birthday, Churio.
But hey, I mean, he's going to be turning 21, I mean, that's a big year for people. I mean, maybe he gets distracted.
He was pretty good at age 20.
Right, but no, what I'm saying is, maybe he starts drinking and it becomes worse.
You're right.
That was the point that I was saying, Luke.
Because he's going to be playing in Milwaukee.
And being stupid. Hey, and they're the Brewers.
Yeah.
Corbin Carroll is
well, just if you took the division out, you took all the guys in the division through this outfield that we've done. So what? We had Yelich number 1 on ours. I think we can probably – I feel like we might have a little regret with that. So Tucker number 1. I'd probably go –
best outfielder in the division?
Let's just rank the 5 best outfielders in the division.
Right. From left, center, or right.
All of them, yes.
This could be another podcast, but I'm Tucker's easily 1.
Yeah, and then I think that you got to go Churio 2. Then I'd go Seiya because we don't really know about Yelich's health, all this right now. And
where
then
did we have O'Neal? Where did we have O'Neal Cruz? Because we were saying he could be back to center.
Right. He'd probably go 5th for me.
O'Neal Cruz would make
if Yelich is healthy, I'd put Yelich 3.
Yeah.
Right behind Churio. But I mean, again, this is just spitballing now and probably about to go over the time limit. But yeah. Anyway, this is fun.
Evil
you think
Wax
people are going to be mad at our list?
Podcast.
You think the people on social are going to be mad about our list?
I don't think so.
No?
I don't think. I think some people will question that if Seiya should be 5. I'm a guy that's questioned Seiya a lot for the defense. So it's not crazy. To trade him. I could easily put Churio ahead of Suzuki, but the body of work is bigger for Seiya Suzuki than it is for Churio right now.
It's fair.
Even with the bad defense, he's a more proven player, more proven hitter than Churio is. This season, it probably very easily flips, and he's not even considered a right fielder. But right now, today, for 1 minute
and
give it to him.
MLB put Seiya and Tucker on their right fielder list too. So
Brendan and Corey with a show at 1:30 for you tomorrow, right here at CHGO Cubs. We thank you for watching. We're back on Monday at 1:30 with another live show for you. We'll probably continue some of our lists here.
Or we could be here over the weekend if the Cubs make a trade for Michael King or Dylan Cease.
Cease. Burning hot stove. CHGO Cubs says thank you. We appreciate it. And don't forget, fly the W.
We all silly like the mayor.